Hello, my soul beautiful family. Hello, hello. You are watching Cosmic Metamorphosis. My name is Katz. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to do Alex Collier's webinar 181 from April 21st of 2023. Today it is June 22nd of 2023. I am sorry it's taking me so long to get these done. Um, Someone has been off of work and been, yeah, around the house, and it's very hard to do videos when other people are here. So, anyway, I am still not working, so I'm trying to make the best of my time. There's just absolutely nothing available in this town. Um, so it's very hard when you are in like retail management to find anything in this town because half of our retail has closed. So it's been very hard, and I'm just kind of taking my time right now. But you go around town and everybody's got hiring signs, but they're still very picky about who they hire. And a lot of people in this town, they just don't want to work. They just don't want to work. And then you go to some place and their customer service really sucks. So anyway, I'm still just biding my time and trying to take it day by day, but thank you for tuning in. A couple weeks ago, we went to a Renaissance festival in Sandpoint, Idaho. Um, it had been a while since we've been to one. Um, it was okay. It wasn't like, I think it was more like a cosplay type of thing where like everybody pretty much dressed up. There were, several of us didn't, but it was really hot. Like it was in the high 80s. And for that area in North Idaho to be that hot, like it is sweating hot. So I didn't really like the Ren Fests I've been to before have had a lot of really cool vendors with a lot of really neat things like pottery and last one we went to, they had like a pirate cove where they had pirate like hats, and there was leather workers that were just really, really good. But this one, I was not impressed for some reason. Like they didn't have any real good vendors, and the only thing that I got was this little little pocket watch. I just thought it was really cool. I saw a copper colored one, but look at it's really detailed. It had wolves. I went back and I found the one with wolves, so I had to get that one. So this was the only thing I got. That was $30, and it's probably only worth like 10. But the only other cool thing there was they had live hawks. So they had birds of prey. They had a male and a female hawk, and then they had the little cute, fluffy, fuzzy baby in a nest. So that was like the best part of it. And something I wanted to bring up because I was watching an interview with Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, and I don't remember which video it was or what interview it was on, but she was talking about the spiral and how the spiral, basically our life is a spiral. It's not circular like we think it is. So I have a video in the very beginning of my videos, and I talked about the spiral, and I said that like our life is in a spiral. It is not circular. So I just thought that was interesting that she kind of validated exactly what I had said in my video like a couple years ago. And then there was a video from Ricardo Bossi talking about the chemtrails. Let me see if I can share my screen. And he is saying exactly, hopefully you can see this, the same.
Rick, what can we do to stop chemtrails?
Don't worry about it. It's not your job. The good guys are spraying to counter what the bad guys have been spraying. They are spraying concealing clouds to prevent you from observing aircraft movements. And some of those aircraft are non-terrestrial technology flown by humans. Don't worry about it. You can look up all you want to. They're not spraying bad shit anymore.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay. So he even says, as I have said in many videos previous to this, I don't think they're spraying bad stuff anymore. I've noticed in my area, just the vegetation and the abundance of butterflies. I mean, it's so much different than it has been in previous years. There's so much abundance and so much growth, and I really think that has a lot to do with the counteracting of the chemtrails. So I wonder if any of you have noticed the same thing. Anyway, all right, let's get to Alex Collier's number 181 webinar from April 21st of 2023. He says, "Hi everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I enjoyed some time off and we are in the green room talking about lawnmowers and trimmers, weed whackers." And he kind of laughs and he says, guy talk, shop talk, and it's kind of funny. So anyways, he says, I hope you're all doing well. We have a lot to cover. He says, I never feel like I'm fully prepared, which is why these things have such an in the moment thing. He says they are in the moment, really. It says, but before we get started, there are a couple of things. One thing for sure, several months ago, I was wearing a Space Force hat, and there was a gentleman in Canada who sent me, he says, I think it was a telegram stating that they couldn't find anything embroidered up by where he lives in Canada. He says, if you're listening or you're listening to the replay, he says, please send me out a hello with your address. He says, because I finally got you a hat. I thought that was really nice of him. He says, okay, I finally got you a hat, and they're getting pretty hard to get. But other than that, I hope everyone's well. He says, if you're paying attention, you clearly see things coming apart, unhinging. You clearly can see the deep state apparatus, the matrix being dissembled and disintegrating into the pile of rubble that it really is. And of course, right now, June 22nd, of course, we're a month past this webinar, and we've got, of course, the submarine that's missing near the Titanic. Wasn't that on the Q map? Yes, it was. So that information is probably going to be coming out, okay? And we see Hunter taking a plea deal, pleading guilty. There's all kinds of things going on right now. It says, if you're new and you're just now listening to conversations where people are pointing these things out, and you are for the very first time putting things together for yourself, as opposed to trusting the word of the communist news networks, CNN or the DNC or MSNBC and the others, and you're figuring it out for yourself. He says that they've been lying to you all this time. You're probably, he says, maybe in essence, going into overwhelm. Yes, because you're watching these things fall apart. And if you're just waking up to this, that's an appropriate response. You're in the right place. What comes now and what you should be doing is moving away from MSM, mainstream media, into alternative media, which is where you're going to find the nuts and bolts of what all this is, why it's happening. There's been a lot of military aircraft over Colorado today, a lot. And over the past week, it's been all over Telegram, of course, that military is in many, many cities. I have a friend whose husband is a vet, ex-army vet, and he was pretty high up. And she showed them all the pictures, the videos, and he said there's definitely something they're preparing for. So, and Alex goes on to say, I don't know if you can ever hear it. Oh, he's talking about the military aircraft over Colorado. He says, I don't know if you can even hear it. He says, you will see it begin to implode. He says, this is actually a really good thing. He says, things are imploding, and we'll organically get into some of those things here in the middle of the webinar. This one's going to be a little different, and before we go any further, there was something I wanted to read from page 145 in my one and only Defending Sacred Ground, which you can download for free on the alexcollier.org. You just go to books, and it's there for you if you want it. And there's a story about this, and how it all came to be. And I've told it ad nauseum for years, but we're going to talk about it. Soul. It's called Soul. And the reason we're going to talk about soul is for many reasons. But what inspired this conversation today was about friends who have been subjected to programs where implants were put in against their will or unbeknownst to them without their permission, and others who say that all contactees have implants. So we're going to have a conversation about this. And the only perspective I can give you is that of the Andromedans, the Zenatan Andromedans, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to present their perspective on this. So the Andromedan view of the soul. I once asked Visayas about what they teach their children about the concept of soul and true essence, and this was the response that he gave me. This is Visayas now. Says we are perceivers. We are an awareness. We are not objects. We have no solidity. We are boundless. The world of objects and solidity is a way to make our passage through our destinies convenient. It is only a description that was created to help us. We forget that the description is only a description, and thus we have learned not to trap totality of ourselves in a vicious circle of physicality, from which few rarely emerge in a lifetime. He says, now, there's a lot to unpack there. He says, there's a lot to unpack there. Remembering we are family, the strength of good people as souls, multidimensional souls. We scan and have history of all densities, all dimensions, 11, 12, however many there are now. What's interesting, however many there are now, meaning maybe there's more than 12 densities. Okay. What's interesting is that all of us, even the dark ones, still have a smidgen of connection to source, which is why they even exist as an individual presence. If there was no connection to source, they would cease to exist. He says it's just, instead of connection being like this, he says it's like this, and he points to this pin. He says, okay, that's how small it is. My perception. He says, regarding implants, this was something that came up a lot in the 70s and 80s, and in the 90s in my conversations with Visayas, because the Greys, Visayas and Mornay, sorry, with my conversations with Visayas and Mornay, because the Greys were doing their thing. Reptilians had been here for a while. says we had the CIA doing stuff, we had DARPA doing stuff. They were putting implants in military personnel, pilots, Secret Service. It's even said presidents get a chip. And I asked them about that, and both Visayas and Mornay confirmed the Andromedan perspective on implants. It is their opinion, okay? This is their perspective that putting a physical implant in another race or being or different physicality than their own would be a sign of ownership. And they felt it was completely unnecessary. But there are many races who are still technologically in that place where they would prefer hardened physical technology to not. It says, now, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a preference. But the A's perspective is very different because it's the only one I found like this. In all my research and talking with other contactees and other abductees, I've had the opportunity to sit down and talk with at length, and what's really interesting is that the A's perspective is this. They felt the ultimate implant in any physical body was the soul itself. That there was no need for technology, and their opinion was, as long as you know the song of the soul, and we've talked about this in the past, every strand of DNA that contains the history, the experience, and the emotional wave of the experiences that one has had as a soul in multiple dimensions, multiple physicality, is unique. Like a fingerprint, he says. Here on Earth, there are no two fingerprints alike. Even clones, he says, have different fingerprints, different earlobes, things of that nature. He says, well, apparently it's the same as the soul. Every soul has its own resonance. See, I said that. We have our own frequency. It's limitless. And once you know that resonance, you have the technology. You will be able to find that soul resonance no matter where it is, no matter what galaxy, as long as they're in this particular universe, they will be able to find one of their own by their frequency, the song of the soul. See, so that's my question too. If these arcs are sending out orbs to find crew members, shouldn't they be able to find them by their frequency, right? So I would think so. It says, so there is no need for a physical implant whatsoever. Some races don't use this. Some races can't. They're not at that level. Some maybe haven't thought about it, and it's very difficult to know because there's so much diversity throughout the galaxy and the universe. I mean, there's so much diversity, it's unfathomable to how much there is. He says, but nonetheless, that's their perspective. Because no matter where you are, no matter what dimension you have, your soul song is always the same. He says it's the same, and that's how they find you. Now, what's interesting about this too is that the concept of twin flames, and I know there's other words that are being used for that, where two souls feel like they're connected, but they've been split apart. All of creation that we know, whether it's this universe or other universes, is color, light, sound. He says it's frequency. And Visayas gave me this insight because back in the 90s, I was living with someone and he kind of stopped and he says, and he just paused, he says, and the topic of twin flames would always come up. And even though they're close, he says they're not the same soul. However, whenever the creation of soul took place, whenever the moment of our individual soul manifested itself, says, and I'll use myself as an example. When I was born as soul to begin my journey, falling into time, into physicality, to experience, to learn, to make mistakes, to do whatever I felt I needed to do, to learn whatever lessons I needed to learn, to garner and gain all of the experience and wisdom that was going to be required of me. Whoever followed me, whoever was next in that creational mind, it would be my song, and then it would be their song. They would be very, very similar. It says, now, it's my understanding from Visayas, and this is their perspective, okay? This is their perspective, that because the frequencies, the songs would be so close, it could be a mistake to think that they were one and the same, that they were the same soul that split into two halves. And it wouldn't matter if you were first, or I was first, and whoever it was second came behind me, or it was flipped the other way. It wouldn't matter, because as souls, we choose gender specific experiences and lifetimes. So that's not an issue. You're not born a woman's soul or a man's soul. We're just souls. I believe that. It says, and we have different experiences, okay? We have multiple lifetimes as a woman, multiple lifetimes as a man, multiple lifetimes as some other species, depending upon where we are. None of that is relative except to the point that we have the experiences that we need. And the only way to learn these experiences is to be part of the physical dimension that we are in, learning and growing and experiencing from. Okay, as Visayas well put it, as he well put it, in order to perceive and make it convenient to be there, otherwise you're just a ghost. Okay. Those have their own experiences as well, but again, we're still talking about a soul, okay, that has chosen not to be in physical form, but in order to remain in a physical realm, that physical form has to feed off physical life in order to be there. And this is where attachments have come in. This is where a soul will choose to be an attachment and to link, to attach to something alive, whether it's an animal, a cat, a human being, a horse. He says something wild in the forest, in the jungle. He says it doesn't matter. They can attach. And here's where I make a hard left turn. Okay. He says clones. He says this thing clones. This comes up more often than I want it to, but I'm going to address it today. I haven't wanted to because it opens up a can of worms and it's just a shitstorm, he says, and I'm so over the shitstorms. I really, really am. But this has to be addressed, so I'm going to address the A's perspective on this. Clones have been around for a while. They're bioengineered. They're manufactured, and essentially it's a physical robot, an organic robot. Back in the day, when some Anunnaki taught magic to the priesthoods, to the ancient priesthoods, whether they're Babylonian, Chaldean, Sumerian, Egyptian, and he says Ubric, not Arabic, maybe he meant that. It doesn't matter. When humanity learned about magic, it says when they learned that they could call in power, energy, key things were left out of it. That wouldn't be a surprise, he says. So ultimately, the abuse of this power was done intentionally. They knew we would abuse the power because we were inexperienced and we wouldn't have the knowledge. They would open up portals and they would call in dark magic, dark energies, dark consciousness, or just consciousness that were not meant to be here, but they did nonetheless. It says, well, there have been many, many instances in history that we don't know anything about where these energies, these entities would come in and they would absolutely wreak havoc. It said absolutely wreak havoc because they're in this realm. They're angry from wherever they were. They didn't want to be here. Now they're stuck, and the only way they can be here is to feed off of the energy of that which is living. Deals were made by some priesthoods. One that's extremely well organized, that's in Rome, says once abused. The ones in Rome, he says, abused this more than anybody, and they would call in these entities to attack or to kill an enemy of theirs, and there would have to be an exchange of some type of energy. Now, they could not send this entity back from hence it came from, so they had to learn all of the things benevolent reptilians, how to ensnare, how to trap these entities so that they would stop killing and murdering. He says the church was the ones that were bringing in these spells and bringing in these dark entities to begin with, and they didn't know how to deal with it. And he says, it's the church. He says, I just said it. And he kind of laughed. He says the church was very, very instrumental in wanting the idea of cloning, because then they could take these entities and they could attach them to a physical form. So they could track these entities in physical form. Because if they were just roaming around free, they would have absolutely no idea where they were going, what they were doing, where they were. They could show up at the Vatican in an hour, etc. Said so they created this monster, and their solution then was to either create a clone or to take someone, whether it was a man, woman, or child, traumatize them to such a point that they were near death, and then they would offer that body to the entities. You take this form, so they could track it. It says this is where exorcisms came in. The church had to learn how to do these things because they created these problems. They abused this situation. Now they were taught by older civilizations that were dabbling in this, but not to the extent that Rome went with it. I thought that was very interesting. I wouldn't be surprised a bit. Damn church. There are quite a few clones on the planet, and I'm not sure who it was that actually said this in the last 2 weeks. It may have been the Commander-in-Chief Trump, who said something to the effect that you'd be really surprised how bad the soul is inside someone. That's because they know. He says they know, and it's an issue. It's a real issue, and because these things are attached to these bodies, because now they have something to live off of, in their corpse. They're working corporations, I guess, and in their corporations, they're working, they're doing anything any normal person would do, but they have a secret life where they are just this dark entity, and they do these horrific things, or they are involved in not only dark magic, but other dark worshiping and other dark energies, okay? Because they're drawn to that energy. All right? It says, in order to resolve this issue, and he kind of laughs, which is why we have so much help here, which is why you're watching and you're feeling the rise in frequencies and ascension occurring with our entire planet, both inside and out. Because of the number of entities that are here, the plan now is to, as quickly as possible, move us into fourth density. What that does is it resolves this huge issue of all of these attachments that are on the planet. They just go away. They just dissolve because now there's not any physicality. And isn't that interesting that he said this a month ago, and we just saw last Friday of the Schumann resonance having all those weird codings that everyone was talking about. So interesting, huh? It says there is an echo, and an echo is like somebody remembers a timeline. Okay, well, I remember being on this timeline. Okay, Well, that timeline no longer exists. What you remember is the echo of it. Okay, it's not really there. It's just an echo because everything is energy. All right. Some remnants are there, but it's not a physical realm anymore. It's just basically an echo, like a cloud of remembrance or of its original physicality. So that's what's happening. I guess that's kind of like the Mandela effect where things have changed. It says the quickening, as Art Bell used to call it, ascension is now moving into very, very high gear. And because this is really the best way to resolve this issue, because it takes care of everything else. And what it also does is it removes the evil that's on this planet. It just wipes the slate clean. Okay, so we go from here with all the garbage. Because let's see, we go from here to here with no garbage. Yeah, from here to here. I guess from here to here. I made little arrows. I'm sorry. I don't remember. Said so that's the plan. That's why so many of us are saying, boy, things seem to be moving very quickly now. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. He says, and this is why you're seeing a lot of new technology, or you're hearing about a lot of new technologies coming out that have nothing to do with the physical body. It's all frequency, because that's where we're going, okay? This is all prepping us for the very next level of physical reality, which is fourth. And it's all frequency, healing frequency, creating frequency. I can't say a lot about the fourth because I haven't experienced fourth density as far as I remember in any lifetime. I just don't know it. But that's what's going on right now. And I wanted to address it because you're going to see a real shift. You're going to see a real separation within humanity. It's important to note that humanity really has to deal with frequency and soul. The human family, the spiritual human family, is beginning its ascension. Okay? Yes, 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 yes. And it's quickening and it's getting faster and faster and faster. And we're going to notice that people that we've always had in our lives, we are going to notice suddenly that now there's a separation. They're no longer in our lives. And you may not even notice it for a while until someone mentions their name. And you're like, well, I haven't been in touch with them and I haven't even thought about them. And that's because of the separation. They're just not moving at the same frequency or speed of light. It's so hard to explain this. They're not moving at the same level, okay? That doesn't mean they're not going to follow, and then there's not going to be the other group, the non-human entity, those with attachments. That group is going to separate itself from the still evolving, still waking up humanity, and they're going to be creating absolute havoc because they realize that what the church promised them, the church cannot deliver, okay? They were promised they could stay in this realm. Well, that's not happening, okay? It says, and the attachments that they've been given, the bodies they've been given are going to be getting ill and sick because their frequency is rising and they cannot rise with the frequency because of the attachment itself and the fact that they do not have soul in those bodies. So they're just going to cross over. They're going to leave. And this group, this soul group of very low vibrational beings, they're going to raise hell. It says they're going to raise hell. Now we're getting a lot of help on that. He says we are. And it's interesting that in a conversation I had with someone that I've known for a very, very long time, she shared with me that angelic presences have shown up. There are angelic presences here now. Few with more coming, and their sole purpose is to stand between the soul of humanity and the non-soul humanity. That's where they're positioning themselves between us and them. And there's more coming to do just this. What did I say a couple months ago? I had that flash of light in my bedroom, that really bright light, that pulsating, and I thought something was going off in my house, and nobody else saw it but me. And I looked it up, and it said that was an angel. And now someone else is confirming that they're finally like starting to show up. So I found that very interesting, really interesting. He says, I mean, we haven't even talked about current events and what's happening with the soul and the surface of the planet itself. There's just so much going on. He says, on so many levels. He says, you know, there's as many things going on the dimensional levels as there is on the physical levels. He says, in the future, we're all going to recognize each other by our frequency, by our soul, and on some level, we already do that. Have you ever met somebody and you knew them, and you engage in a conversation and it feels like you've known them your whole life? It says, well, you've probably known them in other lifetimes. And again, it's that remembrance of their frequency. That's what draws you to them. That's what draws them to you. It's that. Even on karmic levels, it's the same thing. When you meet someone and you're immediately repulsed by them, it could also be your soul remembers their frequency where something happened in the past and you're like, man, I don't want anything to do with them. And that's an obvious trigger for you to look at something regarding who that relationship is. It doesn't mean you need to fully engage. Excuse me. It doesn't mean that you need to go out of your way. It just means there's something for you to see there, okay? Because it's no mistake that your soul would react that way to somebody like that. So that means there's something there for you to look at. And there's an awful lot of that going on right now on the surface, because you know you have the media saying, drumming the beat of this and this and this and this. Well, the first thing you should do is try to remember, we all, and I'm referring to myself as well, well, they want me to look this way. It says, what's going on behind me that they don't want me to look at? Yeah. So, oh, look at over here. Here's the story about the submarine, but yeah, over here there's something going on in the financial. something, because that's what started the Federal Reserve, was when that Titanic sunk and killed those millionaires, because they didn't want the Federal Reserve to go forward, so they sunk the Titanic and killed them. We'll be finding that out. Says, in particular to politics, it's all about misdirection. So if the media says this, this, and this, what you want to do is you want to turn around and look behind you to see what's going on that no one else is paying attention to, because that's where the change is really happening, is what they don't want you to look at. This is all a distraction, okay? He says there is evil here. Some of it came in the form of extraterrestrials, just didn't care for us, just saw it was an opportunity to use, to own, to feed off of. And then there's other element where you had lower fourth density beings who had no business being here, that were brought in here specifically to do works for the dark extraterrestrials and or priesthoods. Cults, for lack of a better word. And now what's happening is they're all being put together in this corner. They're all going to be in this pile of shit together, okay, by themselves, as we leave and we lift up into nirvana and just bliss, love, light, mutual respect. This other collective group, they're just all going to implode, because you have to remember, some of these beings and personages have been executed, but their souls may still be here, all right? Their souls may still be here, and I'm firmly convinced this is why these angelic presences are coming in, is to separate, is to build this wall between them and us. So they cannot reattach to anyone here and hide amongst us. I know it sounds crazy and it's controversial, but before we came down to Earth and we would cruise the universe and we would free planets from tyranny and we would do all of these things that we did. We were known as the system busters. The radicals here, we're conspiracy theorists. And he laughs. He says, and that's what it is. That's what we're doing here. He says, what we're seeing now on the surface is, I truly believe, is the last chess move. It's taken a while. We've been waiting a couple of years for this last move, and it clearly appears to be the judicial system around the world, who most of humanity has given its power away to. Yes, it's been to some doctors, yes, it's been to some politicians, but the judicial system holds a place of its own in all of our societies, and now we're clearly seeing it for what it is. It's just as bad as the others. The political, the pharmaceuticals, the banking system, and it's just as bad, if not worse. And I know that there is an event coming. It says there is a pressure point, a failure point that is, it's very close, it's imminent. He says, I feel like it's imminent, that something is going to occur, an event, and that's when the world's white hats militaries suddenly turn around and come forth and they shut everything down. They lock everything down and they begin the process of telling us what's been going on. And I have a bunch of questions for the white hats. Don't we see that with all the military action coming in to these cities? So hopefully we're going to get what we asked for, what we've been asking for. He says, now, I didn't get to put this series of questions together. He says, I believe somebody had posted this on the Judy Boyington site. But nonetheless, I want to take this opportunity to read these questions, and I'm directing these to the white hats if they're even paying attention. So here are the questions. Why haven't you taken over the mass media? We've talked about this, he says, ourselves before. Why haven't the fake Joe Biden and fake Kamala Harris been removed, especially since they've never certified their oath of office? In fact, none of the Biden's administration has certified their oath of office. Did you know that? Not one of them. And he kind of just chuckles. I love Alex's laugh. It's so cute. It says, why does Congress act like they're legitimately in session? That's what I keep questioning. And I'm like, if you watch C-SPAN, because that's where you need to go to watch all the live, like where they're talking to all the pharmaceutical CEOs, where they're talking to other Congress people, like go to C-SPAN, okay? That's where you can see everything live. And I've questioned that myself. I'm like, they're not in session. Like, why are they doing this? They should be doing other stuff. So why are they doing all this all of a sudden? It's very out of the ordinary if you've paid attention. Okay. How are they getting paid since the Federal Reserve is no longer prints money and the United States corporation is defunct? Why haven't you publicly announced the end of the United States corporation? Why haven't you announced Nasara Gassara to the public? And he says, well, Gassara is BRICS, ladies and gentlemen. He says, that's BRICS. That's what Gassara is. So if you pay attention to who is joining BRICS, those are all the countries involved in Gassara. Okay. Why haven't you removed General Miley and Secretary of Defense Austin? He says they're traitors, no doubt about it. Why haven't we seen public arrests of cabal officials? Why haven't you fixed the issues regarding our fiat currency? And he says it can't be fixed. It just has to go away. And we're seeing the implosion of that entire fiat currency system around the world collapsing in on itself. So you don't have to answer that question. We already know you're on top of that. Why are you promoting an election in 2024 when you publicly haven't resolved the problem of the 2020 or 2022 election? My question exactly. What about all this fix 2020? What happened to that? Now everybody's on the rampage of 2024. Hell no, I'm still on fix 2020. Why are you lying to us, the American people? Why have you not just come clean and exposed it to all of us? He says, Alex says, you've been kicking the can down the street for years, and now many senior citizens, mega truthers, we all know this. We're all beginning to have doubts. And I think that's where I'm falling lately. I'm just in this space. I don't know how many of you feel the same way, but I'm in this space where I feel like there's things I want to get done around my house that haven't gotten done in a long time because I haven't had time, and I'm finally getting those things done. It's like closing a circle, but yet I don't. I'm trying to look forward to the future, but then I can't. Like I'm stuck. I feel like we're all in purgatory right now. Like we're all in purgatory, waiting, waiting. And it's just I have days where I'm just really down and I have to so and it's taken me. Sorry, I guess it's taken me this long to get these videos out to you. So I just have days where I'm not motivated enough to sit and transcribe stuff. Like I'm just dealing with everyday life like the rest of you. So I have my days. Why are the January 6th people who were arrested still in jail? What is the purpose for that? He says, you're losing credibility, and I get your plate's full. I get your fighting multiple wars, but there has to be more information that comes out, okay? There just has to be. And what they say, like, was it like a month ago, they let out the shaman guy that got arrested. And I haven't seen any, like, I literally have not seen one interview with him, with anybody. So I don't know. Like, was it fake? I don't know. It's part of the movie, right? So I'm interested for him to give some interviews. Why are we letting people who took this or coerced take this die when you know that med beds can heal and fix them? Why are I'm going to say healing beds that the military, where are these beds that the military has? Who controls the quantum financial system? Who is making all the rules, and why is it that we still don't know anything about it yet? Most of our checking and banking accounts are already on the QFS. Why haven't you shared this information with the people worldwide? It's time. Why is it that during the revaluation that the restitution will be paid out over 11 years? It says many of the elderly who were affected and most won't live that long, especially since you haven't rolled out the healing beds for them to increase their health or longevity of their lives. Seniors 61 and older should get full payments up front, and that's Social Security. That's debt bonds that were created when they got a birth certificate. They should get all that money up front. I agree if they're not able to use a healing bed, right? Why do you allow this charade to go on? Most of us know that many cabal players are wearing masks. Why haven't you removed the masks? You want people to wake up, take off the masks. Why haven't you sent out Starlink kits to everyone so that we can all get off all crooked cabal owned public internet systems? He says, I mean, it's like a duh moment that should happen before the takedown of the media. I went on Starlink, and you actually can order Starlink internet now. I looked for my area, and I can get it, but it's still a little pricey. I noticed it in another video that I was watching on YouTube, and they had ordered a Starlink satellite for their house, and I was like, what? I didn't know that was available yet. And I looked it up. Sure the shit enough it is. Yes, they are. Why haven't you made it clear to the Supreme Court of the United States that they have committed treason by refusing to rule on the Brunson versus Adams case? Why haven't they been held accountable? He says, we can help. We want to help, all right? We want to be part of the process, part of the fix. This is our country. Many of you out there who are doing this work, we're your neighbors, we're your families. We need to be a part of this process. Let us in on it, he says. Give us some real information. You know we're grasping at straws listening to intel comms that are all spoken in code, and we'll have to listen to someone dropping a piece of intel which was 60 seconds long, but we'll have to listen to 1 hour and 45 minutes for that 60 seconds of information because they love to hear themselves talk. Come on. And that he didn't say the name, but I'm thinking what comes to mind with that would be 107. He likes to drag those interviews out and like take you in circles and talk about stuff in the Bible, and it's for quick little information. He can't just say that. He has to drag it out. So Alex says, let's do this. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, if you're prepared. He says, I hope you are. I hope your pantry's full. I hope you've gone out. I remember when I started in 2016 telling you about silver. I hope some of you have done that, because if you're waiting for the RV and then you're going to buy silver, there won't be any silver to buy, okay? It's already in short supply. It is drying up so fast your head's going to spin, and that's because the bankers, the Wall Streeters, the 401k people, they all know what's coming. They know that the Federal Reserve note's going to collapse, and we don't know how bad it's going to be. There are people who are very reputable that I like to listen to, like Jim Willey. I think he's a hoot, he says, because he's extremely knowledgeable about what's going on. His perspective of the dollar collapse in the United States is catastrophic. It won't go years, it may go a few months, but because of the hardships it's going to create, the months are going to feel like years. So you have to do something to take care of yourself and your families and your loved ones. It is his perspective and others that the day will come where, in order to buy groceries and maybe gasoline, you will need a piece of silver, because they will not take the paper money. Now, the dollar will continue to be used here in the United States, but not everybody's going to take it. One of the things that's been pointed out is that for imported goods, they're not going to take Federal Reserve notes. They're all dumping it. All these countries are dumping it, so you're not going to buy their product, which is being imported from another country here for Federal Reserve notes. They're going to want something else, whether it's XRP or another crypto or silver. They're going to want something of real value, or what they perceive as real value. It will not be paper with pictures on it, okay? It says, so we're there. And if you haven't done anything, well, I don't know what to say. Hopefully you have, and hopefully you've done the best you can, and we all have. We've all been trying to do the best we can. But one of the most important things to be able to have is food, at least for one meal a day for at least a month or so. 2 months would probably be good. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this in other videos. A lot of people don't have money to buy silver. I was suggesting like maybe go to antique stores, thrift stores. There's always silver, like silverware, fancy silverware, knives, forks, spoons that are made from silver, teapots, things of that nature that you could probably find in an antique store or a thrift store. You never know. So that would be a place to look as well. He says if there's martial law, if there's National Guard rounding up, says if there's wars going on in the streets against our militaries and cartels, local police and military against BLM or Antifa, wherever those areas are, you're going to have a hard time. He says because everything's going to be locked down until it's resolved, and they're going to indiscriminately be abusive, these groups, because their gravy train is over with. Now they're going to have to conform, he says. They're not going to get away with all this bullshit they got away with during the Khufu. Because what happened in Portland and Minneapolis, that stuff's not going to fly anymore. And I think I mentioned this before. I think these groups of like Antifa, BLM, you've seen like the BLM leaders like talk about how they're Marxist. I truly think maybe these were kids who were kidnapped, okay, at a young age, and they've been MK Ultra'd, and they were sent into our streets to cause the havoc, to cause all this distress. Because I just don't think normal people would do that. I don't know. What do you think? He says it's just not, so they're not going to get away with this. He says it's just not in local police departments. He says you need to get the citizens involved. It's our homes too. It's our neighborhoods. You're our neighbors. We feel obligated to protect you and your families as well, okay? We're all in this together. You don't need to create the separation any longer. We all need to work together because we are family together, whether I know your first name or I know the names of your kids. He says, okay, we're still sharing a space, a neighborhood, a grocery store, a gas station, a post office, okay? We're all sharing the same space. So this us and them, he says, no, that shit's not going to fly anymore. You'll be amazed at how many people want to help that would have your back. Just veterans alone, there's 25 million veterans? He says, man, we got your backs. Just ask for help. We have your backs. How hard is this? We don't have to make this more difficult. He says, with all the minds and all the experience everyone has just with life, there is nothing we can't come up with on a solution level. Nothing. And probably resolve it immediately without any hardship. Something that everybody would agree with and ask for as intel who's better than your neighbors. Says they know everybody's business. And he laughs. Says, it's just remarkable actually. So there's all kinds of things that can be done. Now is the time to engage with us and we with you. Says, when you go to the police department and the front of the police department has a peephole on it, you're in trouble, okay? When your kids come home from school and you say, what did you learn today? And they say, we learned about George Washington crossing the Delaware. And you say, really? Why do you think he did that? And your kids say, well, he had a girlfriend over in New Jersey. He shakes his head. He says, no, that's not why he did it. He says, when you get answers like that, you're in trouble. He says, he laughs. True story. True story. He says, because because he had a girlfriend in New Jersey. And he just let out a big sigh and laughed. I guess that was one of his kids' answers to him. So it says, I know we're in a difficult spot, ladies and gentlemen. I know there would probably be a lot more participation on the citizens' part, but we are in fact witnessing how corrupt our judicial system is. We did see that these people who were arrested, 114 I think today, who were at the Capitol on January 6th, who have been arrested and have been treated horribly for doing nothing, and they're still there. That was a message for citizens to stand down, and we get that. We know how difficult it's going to be, but why are we still dragging this thing out? Let's get this over with. He says, I mean that with the most respect. I'm not in any way trying to disrespect you, but maybe you can't do everything. Maybe you're trying to do too much. We stand ready and willing to help. We want to. This is our country as well. These are our neighborhoods. These are our states, our children, our schools, our friends. Why wouldn't you use us as a resource? He says, the fucking dark side did. He says, they used us as a resource. Okay? You're the white hats. Why aren't you helping us? Why aren't you using us as a resource to help you? Does any of that make sense? It's like you listen to the news. You can't go to the park, it's dangerous. You can't go to the shopping center, it's dangerous. You can't go to the mall, it's dangerous. You can't go to the gas stations. And then following the news broadcaster who does all that shit, it's a commercial for deodorant. As long as you wear this, you're protected all day. He says, you know, it's such a contradiction. It's such a contradiction. You're out there wanting to help us, save America, save the world, but you won't let us help you as a resource. And he shakes his head. He says, I get it. Your units are your units. Everybody is trained. Everybody can depend on each other because they've been through the fire. They've been through the training. They've been through all of it. Society, you don't know. Well, there are things we can do. And one of those things is to show up and listen to what you're doing, where you need help, the things you've worried about, firsthand communication with each other, sharing intel with each other. You've got veterans. They get it. They know what to do. They know the drill. Some of them are physically hurting because of all this goddamn this the service gave them, and now they're sick. Put them in a healing bed. Put them back out in the field, okay? Put them in neighborhoods. Attach them to neighborhood watch, to the sheriff's departments. Come on, guys. This isn't hard to figure out. He was on a rant. He was really on a rant. Alex was really on a rant with this one. He says, you've got a benevolent AI. You have the alliance there. They can see through people. They know who's good and who's not. This is a no-brainer. We've got to move this along. We have got to move this along. We do. There's a lot of things going on, and it's a bitch being the last to know. He says, it sucks. And I know a few in your position who are in your position, you'd be livid about it as well. If you're in our position, I guess. It's like you're a cop and there's all this stuff going on in your neighborhood, and your police department is the last one to know. You get bent way out of shape when that happens to you. Well, so does humanity. He says, okay. And he chuckles and he says, that's what I got. He says, let's answer some questions. So he ended his little rant. So first question, David Wilcock explained on 16th of April how our DNA functions using photons or light, and that as we go through the photon belt, the light it gives will reactivate our DNA and our sacred geometry. What are your thoughts? Everything you're talking about is so exciting. And Alex's answer was, you as a soul are already turned on. The cellular memory of your body is not. You have the ability right now, your soul, to pull down all of that data and information that you need for you. Okay? Everybody's trip on that is different. It is not like you're wandering in the wilderness of Earth and you have absolutely no idea where you are. It's really not like that. That's a perception. The physical body is not you. It is not me. The photons, all of that, that pertains to the physical body. You understand? You as a soul, before you came into the physical body, which DNA did you have? Does the soul have DNA? It has a song. The soul has a song. It is a frequency. It's an original frequency, an original song. It doesn't have DNA. And where did that soul originate? Heaven, or whatever you want to call it. Outside the universe. It says this known universe. You existed outside there, and you came in from the highest level, and you worked your way all the way down to work your way all the way back up. We are not dependent on photons or anything. It says, I hear what you're saying, though. I do. But you are always soul. Whether God comes down and she says, he says, she says, you know what? Where's my broom? I'm done with this shit, and all physicality is all wiped away. All of it. What's left? He said, you, as a soul, me as a soul. Hopefully, he says, knock on wood. All right, that's what's left. And he laughs. He says, not a DNA strand. Let's remember who we are here. We are infinite, invisible souls. We are souls. Next question. I would love for you to revisit a question asked in the March 15th webinar of 2019 regarding how many times has humanity been prevented from ascending and its relation to fear. Alex says, according to the A's, that number is 7. That number is 7. We're in the 7th trial right now, and there are elements trying to prevent it from happening, okay? Which is why I include it. They're not going to be successful because it's my understanding that the other trials, we didn't have the help we have now. The outside encouragement elements and the lifting up of humanity. But that's what I was told, 7. Somebody may have a different number. I don't know about that, but the A's perspective is 7, okay? This is the 7th trial. So, it says, and we're going to be successful. It's already occurring. Said that twice. It's already occurring. You know the purpose, to go back to the first question, the purpose for the disclosure of healing frequency and color and light and sound. The purpose for that is intentional. It's to remind us who we truly are. We're not this. We're not flesh and blood. And I get that's how we identify ourselves, because we've been in this matrix, this lockdown of physical reality. And it's been so intense. It's been so all-inclusive that it's hard to see ourselves anything but that. But if you've ever traveled soul-wise out of your body, and you can go over to a pool of water, and it's interesting, it doesn't work on mirrors, but will work over water, and you can move slowly, fly over water very, very slowly, and see your reflection, your light. That's all you are. Some atomic telescopes, when they look at the physical body underneath these microscopes, they don't see flesh. It's all light. It's all light. That's who we are. That's really who we are. Renegade light beings. And he laughs. He says, system busters, troublemakers. They send us in. Got a problem down there on Terra. We've sent in some of our other forces, and they just can't cut it. So we got to send in the radicals, the renegades, and it's just let them have at it. Give them a go. Give them the green. Let them go in there and turn the place upside down. That's exactly what we've done. We have turned the place upside down. And he laughs. He says, and now it's free from the shackles, and we're elevating the consciousness of the physicalness of humanity. He says, okay, but we are not the physical. We are not. If you can remember that, and you won't limit yourself to just the physical realm, we can remember that. Then we open our minds, our hearts, and everything we all are to the other dimensional realms to get information, to get assistance, to get our own knowledge of what we already know that we can use here and in the moment. There is so much more to us than we know. So much more. Absolutely. Next question. Have the A's shown you what our universe really looks like? Are we really in a dome with ice wall separating us from the rest of Terra? And he laughs while JP's reading off this question. Alex laughs. Says, is that what we see in the sky or a projection on the plasma screen? Will the A's and the other benevolent beings educate us with the truth soon? So Alex is laughing and he says, the universe is still growing. Back in the 90s, they said it was egg-shaped, but it's still expanding. It's still growing. What you have on the outskirts of the universe, so I'm told, are black holes that move. They move, and as they move, they are delivering stars, material, planets, debris, all kinds of things as it's moving. Kind of like a birthing process, huh? Now, where's this material coming from? Where is this material that's being left by black holes coming from? Right, that's the wonder of source, of great spirit. That's the wonder of great spirit. The earth is still growing. There are some land masses we don't know anything about. If you were to take into consideration the hollow earth and the land masses inside the earth, there's more land mass than we know it. There absolutely is. Is it a dinner plate? I'm sorry to disappoint you. It is not a dinner plate. It is a sphere. Okay? The flattest part of it is at the North Pole, where the largest polar opening is, which is approximately 800 miles, and that's probably the flattest part of the surface. And you know, people can argue. I'm so done with that argument. But anyway, I have not asked that question since the 90s because I never felt the need to revisit it frankly. But you know, as brilliant as the A's are, they don't know everything either. They don't. They're mentored by races of a higher dimensional frequency than they are, you know. And you know, it's interesting how that relationship works. The higher dimensional realms mentor the lower dimensional realms as to what's happening there. And so everyone can learn. Everybody's paying it forward. Everybody's in their own way is helping each other because they see us as one, regardless of our physical differences. Most of the universe sees us as one whole family, which is why they keep paying it forward. Took them a while to get here, but at some point we'll all know the whole story of what actually went down and how it went down. And it'll be an aha moment for all of us. But it's coming. It's coming. I hope it's just not too long, you know, because I want us all to be friends until we're old and senile. And when we're old and senile, we'll become new friends every time we see each other. And he laughs. Okay. Next question. Do you know the true function and purpose of the Washington Monument? Is it actually a transmitter keeping us in a low frequency? He says, you know, I've heard that, but I've not really spent any time researching the Washington Monument. I was never drawn to the Washington Monument, even though I've been in DC. Many times I was never drawn to it. I thought the Capitol was interesting, but not enough to park and wait in line and go into it. I always liked the Lincoln Memorial in Mount Vernon, Washington's estate at Mount Vernon, Monticello. Those places really, he says, I have a very distant emotional and physical connection to those places. He says, well, I know that I was there for the American Revolution. I drove a wagon. It was me and John Crockett, who was Davy Crockett's father. We did logistics. We drove a team of horses and carried materials, and we were one of many. So I'm very connected to that whole thing. Jefferson, I think, was one of the smartest men on the planet we have ever known, along with Nikola Tesla. But I'm really connected to George Washington because I was there and I knew how hard it was. I remember how hard it was. It's like when I asked one of my kids, they were learning about Washington crossing the Delaware, and I said, well, why do you think he did that? Well, of course, he had a girlfriend on the other side. He said, who taught you that shit? He says, well, it's just like, he says, well, anyways, I repeat myself. So I don't know about the Washington Monument. I'm not concerned. They could take it down, and I could frankly care less. Next question. Do you know if elementals are only found on Earth, or do they live in other planets too? On other planets. Are they, or will they be a part of the Federation of Worlds? So much must be going on in their worlds too. Thank you for sharing your courage and convictions with us. And Alex says, I don't know. That's an outstanding question, and I simply don't know the answer to that. For the brief time I was with the A's on the mothership, I don't recall anything about elementals, and I never bothered to even ask about fourth dimension, if there were elementals on fourth. So I guess that's on me. He says, but you have all these questions and you have all these things you want to talk about, and then you're suddenly in their presence, and then the only thing you care about is being in their presence and the feeling that comes over you as being safe, of the calmness. Just the calmness is just, there aren't any words for it. It's a serenity that I cannot explain, and it kind of takes over. It does, and it just kind of takes over, and then you're getting ready to leave and you're like, wait a minute, I have all these questions. Well, it's time for you to leave. We have another mission. We have other things we have to do. We have other commitments. So next time, and the next time, the same thing happens. I don't know about the elementals, but that's a wonderful, wonderful question, and that's in the book that that will be in the next, that I'll add to the question book. Thank you for that. Next question. How do you, wonderful Alex, stay perpetually in your heart space? What do you do if you find yourself being derailed or interfered with by dark workers? He says, I've lost everything 3 times in this lifetime. Everything. Started with the clothes on my back, and it was always by the kindness of others that things began to turn around. Sometimes it was just a smile. Sometimes I would open up a door and someone would say, thank you very much, sir. Just that respect, acknowledging me. That would turn around my mood or my somberness. Being with the A's, realizing that any situation I found myself in on Earth was never hopeless, ever. Because here I am in another reality, and even when I wasn't there, just a telepathic communication saying, you're doing well, we care about you, we love you. Just knowing that someone cared was enough to keep me going. My kids, when I could talk to them, playing with the dogs at the park, feeding a stray cat, and having them leap. What? Feeding a stray cat and having him allow me to pet him, and he'd purr on me. You can't put a price on that. Being in nature, sitting up against a tree and crying and allowing the tree to take my pain, my grief. There are just so many ways to remember who we are, what we are. There have been times when I didn't like who I was, but I always loved who I was. And I think that's what's made the difference. I always knew I'd figure it out because I'd never give up. There are times I wanted to. I was having a pity party with no pizza. He says, no band, no orchestra. He's just laughing. And he says, it was just me, myself, and I, my own pity party. But when I released that energy and I got over it, I would start over. I would just start over with that. He says, I knew, and you never give up on yourself. You just never do. And I don't know how people do that. I don't know how they give up on themselves. He says, that's a novel in itself. There are so many people I care about on this planet, so many people, and whether anybody believed my story or not never really mattered. It never really mattered. I just knew that the information that Morne and Visayas gave me was important enough that it had to be shared. I'm just as surprised as anybody that it's survived. Honestly, I am, and it's more relevant today than it was then. He says, you just don't know. He says, you just don't know. Knowing how hard it was, would I do it again? I could honestly tell you no. That doesn't mean I wouldn't do it again. And he laughs. I know that's confusing, right? I know that's a contradiction. But there are times in our lives when we are faced with something and we are compelled to move forward, no matter what the odds are. Just compelled to do it, and you do it because you don't give up on yourself. You don't always know where it's going to end up, where it's going to go. You just have faith, and I've always had faith. I've always known that there's a greater power. I knew that when I was little. He says, there is nothing extraordinary about me other than I've had an extraordinary life, this particular lifetime, and I can't tell you why. It just is. He says, it just is. He says, let's move on before I start crying. He says, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for everything. Again, that person in Canada, I have your hat, okay? You got to let me know who you are, where you are, and your address. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. Thank you for your continued support of our webinar and the things that we share and try to do. This doesn't happen without you. End of story, period. And I genuinely, sincerely mean this. You are the best group ever. Best group ever you are. You're just awesome. I love your questions. Your question and answers just rock. And next week is a question and answer. So have those great questions. I'm ready. He says, and have a wonderful week. I'm sure there's going to be some things to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, okay? So don't freak out. Don't wig out. Try to remain calm. Stay grounded. All right? When you're grounded, you're standing in your power. That's where you need to be. Stand in your power, okay? God bless. Okay. So that ends that. And again, if you're just watching this, like, I don't do all the questions because there's several questions and there's topics he's already covered, and I just try to put in the new ones. But thank you so much for watching. Go and support Alex and JP and James. Go to alexcollier.org or on brighteon .com where he does his webinars every Friday. And that's under Alex Collier Official 2. Go and show some support for him. And also, hopefully you guys are going to go see The Sound of Freedom if you're here in the US. That starts the 4th, 5th, and 6th they're having. So I'm going to buy my tickets today, and we're going to go see that along with my friends. And I'm going to bring a big box of Kleenex because I'm sure I'll be bawling. So yeah, Sound of Freedom, go watch that in your local theaters and support for the child trafficking. We have got to wake people up to this. We've got to wake people up to what has been going on with our kids, as well as, even other adults that go missing. So please support Angel Studios. You can go to angelstudios.com and buy your tickets. Pre-buy your tickets. They're trying to get 2 million people ahead of time to purchase their tickets. So I'm going to do that today. So thank you so much for watching. I love all of you, my soul family. I will try and get the next webinar out to you as soon as I can. It's May 5th and I've been transcribing that. So I will try and get that done this week so I can get a video out next week to you. So I love all of you. Continue to be that lighthouse and shine your light bright. Okay, stand your ground. Shine your light so other lost ships at sea in the darkness can find their way home. Okay. And so say we all. Thank you so much. I love y'all.